Alright, hello everyone. We're going to use the square root method today to solve quadratic equations. So, we've done problems like this before where b is missing, except now we're going to do it a different method. So, our bx is missing. Usually we would set it up like this. But today we're going to use a different form. Today we're going to do these steps. So we're going to isolate x squared. Now these will have different steps every time. That's why it says isolate, because that could apply to all the problems. In this particular problem, the way we isolate is we inverse 49. We're going to add it this time to both sides. So I've got x squared equals 49. Well then, the next step is going to be take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to have x squared equals 49, but the square root of both of those is going to give me a completely different answer. I'm going to have x equals 7 and negative 7 with the squiggle braces. Now, please remember, you have to have a positive and negative root because 7 times 7 gives us 49, but also negative 7 times negative 7 gives us 49. That is why we have to include both numbers. So, we are going to check out this problem. Now, like I said, before we used to do x plus 4, x minus 4 equals 0. We would set each one equal to 0, and we would solve. So we would have, x plus 4 equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0, and you would get negative 4 here and positive 4 here. So you would have x equals negative 4, positive 4. But we are going to do a much quicker method. So now, instead of doing all of that, we're just going to isolate x squared. So I'm going to instead add 16 to both sides. I'm going to get x squared equals 16. When I take the square root of that, I get x is equal to 4 and negative 4. I get the exact same answer I got the other way. This is just a quicker method. Now, we're not always going to get an answer. There are times you're going to have no solution. Times like that include this situation. For example, I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. So I've got x squared equals negative 3. Well, here's the problem. If you put square root of this, square root of this, that's great. The square root of negative 3 is no solution because there is no number that can multiply by itself to give you a negative number. A positive times a positive gives you a positive. A negative times a negative gives a positive as well. That means that we cannot get this. So we are going to have no solution. Now, you can use the symbol or you can actually write no solution. However, if you just put 0, you will not get the correct answer. 0 is a number. You have to put the slash through it. So you can use either one of these. Now, like I said before, we're going to have different steps depending on what the problem looks like. It's not always just add or subtract. In this case, we are going to have to divide. We have to divide because there is nothing between these two. When there is no space, there's no plus sign, there's no subtraction sign, that means there's an invisible multiplication symbol. So we have to do the inverse of multiplication, which is to divide. So we're dividing by 6. We have x squared equals 9. And when I take the square root, I get x is equal to positive 3 and negative 3. There are going to be problems where you're going to have to do more than that kind of step. So I'm going to show you guys a problem like that. I'm going to actually I'm going to write it in. So we're going to disregard this number. We're going to just completely get rid of it. We're just not going to worry about it. I'm going to write in number 10. So number 10, I've got 1/2 x squared minus 5 equals 45. Okay, so what's going on with this one? We have a two-step equation. So my first step, now when you guys solve two-step equations, there is an easier first step. Technically, you can do either step. You can either divide or multiply, or you can add or subtract. It technically does not matter which one you start with, but the easiest first step is to add or subtract. That way we don't have to deal with any weird fractions. So I'm going to inverse my 5 by adding it. I'm left with 1/2 x squared equals 50. Now, like I said, there is an invisible multiplication symbol in between these two. So I can divide by 1/2 on both sides. Or you can multiply by 2, which is the denominator, on both sides to cancel out the fraction. Whichever way you go about it is fine. It works out just fine. Please remember, when you're typing this in your calculator, you need to make sure you type it in something along the lines of this will be 50 divided by 1/2. If you don't type that in, you might get a weird answer. So please keep that in mind. This one will work out just fine, but there are other ones that won't work out. So please, please, please make sure you always use your parentheses for whatever you're dividing by. Whoops, my bad, too far. Okay. So now what we're looking at is we've got x squared equals 25. So again, we take the square root. We get x is equal to positive 5 and negative 5, or negative 5, positive 5. It doesn't matter what order they're in. There's another one I need to write in for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here, and I'm going to write in, I would like to write in 16. Wow. So I'm going to write in 16 here. I've got 9x squared minus 16 equals 0. Now, before we would have done 3x plus 4 and 3x minus 4 equals 0. But we're not doing that this time. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the new method. So we're going to instead, we're going to inverse 16. I've got 9x squared equals 16. Now we're going to have to divide by 9. So we're dividing by 9. And I've got x squared equals 16 over 9. I could go ahead and divide this, but I won't get a whole number. So for right now, I'm going to leave it alone. I would like you guys to acknowledge or to realize that these numbers are perfect squares. 16 is actually 4 times 4, and 9 is actually 3 times 3. So since I know that, I know that I'm going to get a whole number when I take each of these separately. And that's what we're going to do on this. We are going to take the square root, but when you take the square root of an entire fraction, you're actually going to take the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. So you're going to get 3 over 4. Whoops, my bad. I'm so sorry. You're going to get 4 over 3. And for our final answer, you're going to have x is equal to negative 4 over 3 and positive 4 over 3. So keep that in mind. If we're dealing with fractions, you're going to go ahead and leave it like this so that we can get an answer like that. The answer will still be a fraction. We also need to see 20. So I'm going to go ahead and write 20 in. Alright, well that's not working. So here we go. Since we're going to see 20, okay, hold on. Before I do 20, I want to do 18. 18 is important to know because we're going to use the same method we just did, but there's a problem with it. Okay, so I'm gonna, same idea as what we just did, but when I inverse 16, you see I'm gonna get 49 x squared equals negative 8. Well, there's the problem. When I divide by 49, I'm gonna have x squared equals negative 8 over 49. Now here's the problem. If any part of your fraction is a negative, then it cannot give you a real number. So you're going to have to say no solution because negative 8 in there messes the whole problem up. So that is why I wanted to look at 18. Last but not least, I'm going to write in 20. Here's 20. X squared minus 41 equals 0. Now you're going to notice this time, this is not a perfect square. I know. We're not always going to have perfect squares. So this time you're actually going to have a decimal. Your answer is actually going to be 6.4 and negative 6.4. And that is okay. And we rounded that. We've also got problems like this. Now before, with similar setup, you were supposed to add or subtract first. However, some of you might be saying, oh right, we need to distribute first. There's an even better step. Since there is nothing between these two, there's an invisible multiplication symbol. That's part of why we distribute. So we're going to divide instead. I'm going to divide by 3/4. I'm going to divide by 3/4. Please remember when you're typing this in your calculator, you are going to make sure to have parentheses unless you're able to put in a fraction, like using the ABC method, or if your calculator is able to put the fraction in parentheses is the safest bet, depending on what calculator you have. So I am going to now have x squared minus 17 is going to be equal to 8. And then we're going to do, of course, like we did before, add 17, inversing our 17, x squared equals 25. And then we're just taking the square root. X is equal to the negative 5 and positive 5. One more problem. We are going to, you don't have this problem in your notes, but most classes did it in class. We're going to go over it again too. So, easier problem. I mean, you can't take the square root of this whole left side. So we can't even do that as our first step. We have to add 4. So we're going to inverse our 4. So we're left with x plus 3 squared equals 4. Well, now I can take the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I've got x plus 3 equals 2. But there's more. I've also got x plus 3 equals negative 2. I have to account for both the positive and the negative cases. So you're going to do the exact same inversing. I'm going to inverse 3 on both of these. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. So final answer is going to be 2 different numbers this time. I'm going to have negative 5 and negative 1. Excellent. So these should have been examples for most of your cases. Good luck, and please make sure to ask your teachers if you have any other questions.